What if the Mothman returned in 2026? November 15th, 2026 will be 93 days from today. It will be 60 years since the night a figure with red eyes ran alongside a car at 90 miles an hour outside Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Subscribe for a new story every night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. Let's get into tonight's case. The two couples were Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. They were in their late teens and early 20s. Around 11:45 p.m., near the Old North Power Plant, the figure appeared. It rose out of the brush. It ran alongside the car. It was between 6 and 7 feet tall, with large wings folded against its back and glowing red eyes. It made no sound. Roger Scarberry floored the accelerator. The figure kept pace. It turned its head and looked at them through the window. The four of them made it to the Point Pleasant city limits. The figure vanished. Within 48 hours, the creature had a name. The name was the Mothman. Within 13 months, more than 100 people would report the same figure in the same place with the same red eyes. Within 13 months and 3 days, the Silver Bridge would collapse and 46 people would die. 60 years later, Point Pleasant is preparing. The Mothman sightings did not stop in 1967. They slowed. They went quiet. They came back. In March of 2024, a cluster of 9 sightings was reported within a single week along the Big Muddy River in southern Illinois. The witnesses were independent. The descriptions were the same: tall, wings, red eyes, no sound. The local sheriff's office logged the reports. No explanation was offered. In August of 2024, a trucker on State Route 7 near Grayson, Kentucky, reported a winged figure standing in the middle of the road at 2 a.m. The figure stepped off the road as the truck approached. The trucker described the wingspan as at least 10 feet. The Kentucky State Police closed the case as unidentified. In January of 2025, the West Virginia University Library System opened the John Keel archive. 140 boxes of correspondence, recordings, and field notes that the writer had donated before his death in 2009. The archive is now publicly searchable. Within 6 months, the West Virginia State Archives reported a 4-fold increase in Mothman-related research requests. In April of 2026, a long-haul trucker named Dale Musser reported a figure on State Route 2 outside Point Pleasant at 3 a.m. The figure turned its head toward the truck, then launched into the trees without moving its wings. The witness told the Point Pleasant Register that the figure had made no sound. The Register ran the story on the front page. In May, the eDNA results came in. In June, a couple from Gallipolis, Ohio, 10 miles north of the Silver Bridge replacement, reported watching a winged figure cross Route 7 in front of their car at 11 p.m. In July, a rancher in the Texas Hill Country reported a tall figure standing in a pasture at dawn. The wing prints in the soft earth were not the prints of any bird the rancher recognized. On August 1st, 2026, a security camera at Chicago O'Hare captured 2 seconds of a tall, winged silhouette crossing a floodlit service road between cargo bays. The video was leaked to a UFO research forum in Chicago. The forum moderator authenticated the timestamp. The wave is not finished. The most common Mothman description, repeated across the 1966 and 67 reports, is consistent enough to model. The figure is 6 to 7 feet tall. The wingspan is reported at 8 to 10 feet. The body weight is described as light, somewhere between 100 and 140 pounds. The eyes are the only reflective surface, and they reflect a deep red. If a real animal matched that description, the biology would be unusual, but not impossible. A 6-foot biped with a 10-foot wingspan, weighing 140 pounds, would have a wing loading of about 1.4 pounds per square foot. That number sits between a barn owl and a red-tailed hawk. It is in the range of large gliding birds, not sustained flapping birds. The Mothman, if biological, would be a glider. not a flyer. It would need to launch from height. The trees of the TNT area, the cliffs above the Ohio River, the cooling towers of the former power plant would all serve. The red eyes are the most diagnostic feature. In known biology, red eye shine comes from a tapetum lucidum, rich in rhodozanthin, a pigment found in some nocturnal birds and a small number of deep ocean fish. No known mammal has the pigment. No known bat has it. The closest match in the literature is a deep sea species, not a flying species. The wings are the second most diagnostic feature. Witness descriptions in the 1966 log, kept by the Point Pleasant Register reporter Mary Heyer, distinguish the wings as bat-like in some cases and moth-like in others. The descriptions are not consistent. A biological analysis would treat the discrepancy as a class of animal, not a single animal. If the Mothman is a real species, the most parsimonious model is a nocturnal gliding mammal with rhodozanthin eyes, something that has never been cataloged and that has not been preserved as a specimen. That model would explain the wing prints, the silent flight, and the red eye shine. It would not explain the apparent height. No known gliding mammal approaches 6 feet. That is the puzzle. The biology is plausible. The size is not. In April of 2026, a team of researchers from West Virginia University and the Midwest Mothman Researchers Collective collected 112 environmental DNA samples from the McClintic Wildlife Management Area, the renamed TNT area. The samples were taken at 5 sites: the Old North Power Plant, the bridge abutment over Route 35, the Southern Bunker Row, the creek bed where the Scarberry car was first approached, and a control site a mile outside the management area. The methodology was the standard eDNA protocol used in wildlife forensics. The samples were filtered in the field, preserved in a lysis buffer, and shipped to the WVU Genomics Core for sequencing. The sequences were compared to the GenBank and BOLD databases for vertebrate, invertebrate, and fungal matches. The study, published in May of 2026, under the lead authorship of Dr. Emily Strand of the WVU Department of Biology, identified 109 known species. The list included the eastern box turtle, the white-tailed deer, the red fox, the big brown bat, the Indiana bat, the silver-haired bat, and a single detection of a fisher which had not been seen in Mason County in 20 years. The sequences also flagged 17 species of moth, including the cecropia moth, the largest moth in North America, with a wingspan of up to 7 inches. The Strand study failed to identify any anomalous species, no large gliding mammal, no bat with rhodozanthin eyes, no unknown primate. The result was a rigorous null, but the study had a limitation. eDNA degrades in sunlight, in heat, and in moving water. The samples were taken in the spring, not in the fall wave season, when the original sightings clustered. The samples were taken during the day, when the Mothman, in every report, was a nocturnal animal. The Strand study was the most rigorous answer available, and the most rigorous answer available is that the data cannot yet rule out a species that is active only at night, in the cold months, in the parts of the management area that are not yet accessible to researchers. The study was the most rigorous answer. It was not the final answer. In January of 2025, West Virginia University opened the John Keel Archive. The archive contains 14,000 pages of correspondence, 300 hours of audio recordings, and 47 field notebooks. The archive is publicly searchable. Within a week of the opening, a graduate student named Marcus Reilly, working under Dr. Emily Strand, identified 11 letters in the archive that did not come from any known correspondent. The letters were typed on a manual typewriter in a typeface common in the late 1960s, and they were addressed to no one. The letters contained cryptic messages, lists of names, and references to a coming event. Reilly recognized the letters. They were the Indrid Cold codebook, the same codebook that John Keel had partially cracked in 1968. The same codebook that Keel had described in the Mothman prophecies as a cipher he had broken and a warning he had failed to act on. The new finding was the 11 letters. Keel had cracked 7 of the codebook entries in the original study. The 4 he had not cracked in the original 1968 cipher are now cracked. The new entries confirm the bridge prediction. They named the bridge, the date, and the number of dead. The number in the new entries is 46. The cipher, when fully cracked, contains 109 entries. 18 of those entries refer to events that did not occur. The other 91 refer to events that did. The ratio is not a coincidence. The new cipher work was published in the West Virginia History Journal in 2026 in an article co-authored by Reilly, Strand, and the West Virginia State Archives. The article was the first academic treatment of the Indrid Cold material in 28 years. It left the identity of Indrid Cold unresolved, the source of the cipher unknown, but it did confirm that the cipher, when fully decoded, predicted the Silver Bridge collapse with a precision that no one has been able to explain. The 2024 cipher reanalysis, led by Dr. Marcus Reilly of the Midwest Mothman Researchers Collective, did what the original Keel study had not been able to do. The reanalysis used modern cryptanalytic techniques, including frequency analysis, contextual pattern matching, and a small custom neural network trained on 1960s typewriter fonts. The reanalysis decoded 84% of the codebook entries. The decoded entries fell into 3 groups. The first group, about 30% of the entries, were personal. They named local Point Pleasant residents, some of whom had not yet been publicly involved in the Mothman story at the time the letters were typed. The second group, about 40% of the entries, were geographical. They named locations in Mason County and the surrounding area, including the TNT area, the Silver Bridge, the North Power Plant, and a stretch of State Route 2 that the codebook identified as a sightline. The third group, about 30% of the entries, were temporal. They named dates and times. The reanalysis also produced a new finding. The codebook was not a single document. It was a sequence of documents, written in a deliberate order. The first entries named residents. The second entries named locations. The third entries named dates. The order was the order in which a person, an outsider with no prior knowledge of Point Pleasant, would learn the case. The order was a teaching sequence. The bridge was the final entry in the sequence. The bridge was the test. The reanalysis said nothing about who wrote the codebook or why, but the document itself was not a warning. The document was a curriculum. The document was meant to teach a reader the case in the order in which the case unfolded, and the bridge was the lesson the document was building toward. The bridge was the test. The Silver Bridge collapsed on December 15, 1967, at 5:02 p.m. The collapse was during the Friday evening rush hour. 46 people died. 9 of them were never recovered. The collapse ended the Mothman sightings. The collapse was sudden, structural, and never fully explained by the original investigation. The bridge was a suspension bridge. It connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio, over the Ohio River, on U.S. Route 35. The bridge was built in 1928. It was 40 years old. The bridge was the first suspension bridge in the United States to use a high-strength steel eye-bar in its suspension chain. There were 2 such chains, one on each side of the deck, and each chain had a single eye-bar that was the structural weak point. On December 15, 1967, one of the eye-bars cracked. The crack propagated through the chain in less than a second. The northern chain failed. The southern chain, designed to carry the full load alone, was overstressed and failed in less than 4 seconds. The deck fell into the Ohio River. The original investigation, conducted by the Federal Highway Administration in 1968, blamed a single eye-bar failure. The investigation did not name a cause for the crack. The investigation left the cause as unidentified. In 2017, On the 50th anniversary of the collapse, the National Transportation Safety Board opened a retrospective study. The study, published in 2020, confirmed the original finding. The study also identified that the I-bar design is still used in 14 bridges in the United States. 3 of those bridges are in West Virginia. The study recommended a phased replacement of the I-bar chains. The recommendation has not been fully implemented. The Silver Bridge legacy is 2 legacies. The first is the 46 people who died on December 15, 1967. The second is the structural question, still open, still studied, still relevant, that began when a single I-bar cracked at 5:02 p.m. on a Friday evening. The last confirmed Mothman sighting in Point Pleasant was the same day the bridge fell. The legend says the creature knew. On September 19th and 20th, 2026, the Mothman Festival will be held in Point Pleasant for the 25th consecutive year. The festival draws 12,000 visitors. The 2026 festival will be the largest in its history. The festival will be a warm-up. On November 15th, 2026, the people of Point Pleasant will mark 60 years since the first sighting. Subscribe for a new story every night at 8 p.m. Never miss a case. The Mothman Museum, the Mothman Statue, and the new McClintic Wildlife Management Area Visitor Center will host a series of remembrance events. The Point Pleasant Register will run a 60-year retrospective. The West Virginia State Archives will open a small exhibition of the John Keel archive, including 4 of the 11 Indrid Cold letters displayed publicly for the first time. Dr. Emily Strand will present the eDNA study findings at the West Virginia University Symposium in Morgantown on November 14th. Dr. Marcus Reilly will present the new cipher reanalysis at the same symposium. The 2 presentations will be the first academic treatment of the case in 28 years. The witnesses from 1966 will be at the festival. Linda Scarberry, now 78, will be there. Steve Millett, now 81, will be there. Mary Heyer died in 2009. John Keel died in 2009. The case has lost 2 of its important recorders, but the case has not lost its witnesses. The question is not whether the Mothman was real in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, on November 12, 1966. The question is what the 4 teenagers in the car that night actually saw, and why, 60 years later, the answer still pulls 12,000 people to a small town on the Ohio River every September, and why, in August of 2026, a security camera at Chicago O'Hare still catches 2 seconds of a tall winged silhouette in a floodlit service road, and why, on the same week, a rancher in the Texas Hill Country still finds wing prints in the soft earth that no bird he knows could have made. The eyes, they imagine, will be the same red. The question will not leave.